Greetings and welcome to another episode of Black Mental Health Matters. Thank you for joining us today for an engaging and insightful conversation about mental health within the Black community. I am your host, LaChish Rigg, CEO of LJR Training and Coaching, and I am an educator and a mental health advocate. Our topic today is the invisible struggle, unpacking the complex relationship between mental health and motherhood. So, we have the pleasure of learning from Miss Carla Carlisle. And stay with us. We're going to get a chance to learn from her in just a moment. All right. Well, welcome, Miss Carla Carlisle, mental health advocate, award-winning author and mom. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just from our conversation prior, I'm just excited for the viewers to be able to learn from you as I was able to glean so much from you. So, with that being said, I want to just dive right in so we can listen and learn.
Sounds good.
All right. So, first question on this topic, the invisible struggle, unpacking the complex relationship between mental health and motherhood. What are some unique challenges Black mothers face compared to other demographic groups?
Sure. This question is a really interesting one because while we deal with so many of the struggles that other ethnicities, have, like, housing and making ends meet, and the safety of our children. For Black mothers in particular, it's compounded because of things like police brutality and gun violence. And so it adds such complexity. Many moms are playing the role of mom and dad. And so those are things that make it so hard for us at times to be able to function in a way that we'd like. And then one other thing I would say is there's oftentimes a lack of knowledge about resources and support, or that support may not exist. If it does exist, it may be hard to find or even know that it's out there. And then again, like I said, in many instances, it just doesn't exist.
I see. Yes, that sounds about right. And thank you for sharing that just right
Yeah.
off the jump.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And
Um,
a couple other
yeah.
things, if I may. Um, I think that fear is such a factor for Black moms and moms in general. But if we just look at the rising statistics about Black youth and suicide, if we look at youth in general, according to the CDC, the top leading causes of death for ages 15 to 19 are accidents like unintentional injuries, homicide, and suicide. And there's such stigma attached to suicide. So if we're not talking about it and we're not encouraging our children to talk or to be open, there can, anytime someone loses a life, it's devastating. When it's something that, we feel kind of in hindsight could have been prevented, there's a lot of guilt centered around it. And then the other thing I would just say is there's this fallacy about the strong Black woman.
Mm,
I just want to retire that phrase completely,
yes.
because if we're not strong, then we feel like we failed. And that's so much pressure. I'd like us to look for it. I mean, I don't know if you've heard about this or if the audience has heard about this concept of the soft life. And some people agree with it, some people don't. But what I like about it is
Mhm.
that it's okay to ask for help.
Yes.
It's okay to eliminate stress from your life. And it's necessary to retire that superwoman cape. We are not
Absolutely.
superheroes. We are not, we are not
Yes.
just strong Black women. And actually, even if we could change the definition of what strong looks like, strong used to look like I'm going to wear 1,000 hats. I'm going to be there for everyone. I'm going to do everything, and I'm not going to do anything for myself.
Yeah.
For me, the soft life looks like asking for help, getting support,
Mhm.
taking all these thousands of hats off of our heads. Like, you could be weighed down by all of that, right? Because there's so many things
Absolutely.
to take care of. Um, and so I would just go back to this whole statement of what happens when you get on the airplane. What do they say? Put your
Mhm.
mask on first. It's not a luxury. It's
Mhm.
a necessity, because if I can't breathe, I can try to help my son or the next person with their mask, but I'm out of air. So I'm not going to be that effective. So what this is about is this is like the bare minimum of what we owe ourselves to even be able to help anyone else. Put that mask on, please, ladies.
Absolutely. Look, I couldn't agree with you more if I wanted to. Everything that you're saying, I co-sign to. As an educator and as I said, a mental health advocate, someone who has taught as well as still infuses social emotional learning,
Yes.
including but not limited to a self-care and various coping strategies, including asking for help for all genders, but especially females and especially Black females, because of what you said, that whole strong Black woman, I rebuke it. It's a sort of nice sounding being strong, but then as you mentioned, it then it causes us to wear so many hats and burn ourselves out and not get enough care as we need. So again, I couldn't agree with you more if I wanted to. So thank you for adding those excellent points. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for our next question, and you probably already started to answer this, but how do those challenges that you just touched on that are unique to Black women and Black mothers specifically, and the stigma surrounding mental health in the Black community affect Black mothers when they're seeking help for their mental well-being?
Well, I think, mental health was and still is a taboo topic in many Black families, and we know that. Even if it is accepted, the focus is typically on the child. But
Mm.
this is what lived experience has taught me, and this is what I've seen working in many communities, is that if things stay the same with the adults in the household, there's not going to be a lot of change for the child. the child can become more informed, but if they're not able to do the things to support their mental health, if the parents aren't there to learn along with the child or learn in advance of the child, I think that we all have to work to be healthy holistically, and that includes mental health. And I think the sooner we accept that as a community, and I think forums like this are very important, because first of all, it says, you know, you can look like you have your stuff together, you can go out and put on that face, but we're all struggling with something inside. You know, some of us are comfortable with sharing our stories, and I share mine and the stories of others who have shared with me with permission, because nobody is alone in this. We're all dealing with it. And so I think that, you know, a diagnosis, like a mental health diagnosis, to a lot of people is like a death sentence. Mm-hmm. And it can be, if you allow it to be. Right. What I mean by that is it can also be a key to a lock, mm-hmm. to many resources that you didn't even know were out there. And I think that it's really kind of a balance in terms of, like, I don't want my child stigmatized because he has this disability. But I also know that there's support out there for him because of this disability. Like my son, for example, has post-traumatic stress disorder. And, you know, I've learned about things. I've done trauma training. Mm-hmm. I've done a lot of things to become educated so that I could become a better parent to him. And with that, I learned a lot about myself too. Mm-hmm. Like, I started understanding more about the trauma I experienced. You know, I remember being in therapy, and I'll share this with you really quickly. And for 2 years, I couldn't say the word anxiety. I kept, stress. Why was it so difficult to say anxiety? Like, I had a diagnosis of an anxiety disorder, right? I have a diagnosis of major depressive disorder. And that's okay. I'm still functioning. I'm still doing things that I need to do, but I take care of myself first. And I think that's a lot of what we have to do.
Again, I am in agreement with you. And just from what I'm hearing, among other things that I'm hearing from you, is really normalizing for people in general, those of us in the Black community, and specifically Black females, Black mothers, normalizing that it's okay to need help. Having a diagnosis is, as you said, not a health sentence. But what I like to share with, you know, those who want to listen to me, be it my students or whoever I have conversation with, the misconception about, you know, mental health is that something is wrong. But I like to look at it from the paradigm that, what do I want to improve about myself to live a healthy life, right? Including but not limited to self-care, setting boundaries, things that can calm us when we have anxiety, and a variety of coping strategies. So I love that you're normalizing, or you learned to, in that self-awareness that you were able to increase as you were, you know, learning about how to help your child. So, so that's what I believe that we need to do. Like, let the stigma go, normalize it so we can be healthy and not just stay stuck in these unhealthy, toxic ways that really do us a disservice. So yes, again, yes.
And I think also that sometimes something like ADHD is actually, as much as it can be challenging, it can also be a superpower.
Absolutely. That was the last topic that I talked about. And the guest did such a great job of sharing not only some of the challenges, but, as you say, some of the superpowers. And I love that you brought that up because, you know, with the stigma, there is that sort of focus on the problems, right? Yes. Challenges, the you know, how the issues that causes for someone. And while that is true, to your point, there are a lot of superpowers. There are a lot of things that individuals that, even though like they might struggle with something, they're like super good at, you know, being able to get a lot of things done. Like maybe their anxiety is like keeps them up, but they'll be the one getting everything done. Like, you know, past everybody, like past every test, right? So, definitely we want to get the help that we need, but not necessarily look at it like it's a negative thing. So that's an excellent point.
Yeah. One of the amazing things that happen, as I'm parenting my son is that I learned from his elementary school principal that he has a diagnosis of ADHD, and this man is brilliant. He gets so many things done, but he also puts guardrails in place so that he doesn't get stuck, so that he, recognizing, hey, I'm jumping all over topics. I do the same thing. I'm not going to lie. I do the same thing with jumping all over the place because something pops into my mind that I just need to get out right now. But I've learned some coping strategies or just how to make it work for me.
Exactly. There are like so many high functioning people with a variety of disorders. Like I said in my last episode on that topic of ADHD, one of the things that was shared was individuals like that are prominent out there, their names are out there and they have that. So like you said, it's not a death sentence, any diagnosis. It's really just a self-awareness of what we have and getting the help, as you rightfully said, the support that we need, which really we all should get support, right? Support system is so key. And just living your best life with whatever you have to deal with. Like that is really an excellent point. Yeah. Yes. So absolutely. Oh my gosh, I'm loving this conversation. Like I said, so happy you're here. So thank you. Yes. So our next question, I feel like as we have our conversation, I feel like some of the questions are already touched on, but whatever you want to add to when I ask a question, then we'll do it like that. But what strategies can Black mothers use to prioritize their mental health while balancing the demands of motherhood, work, and other responsibilities?
Sure. So when I do workshops, I talk about these 3 tenets for change. The first one is awareness. So awareness is like learning about our mental health and the need for self-care, just knowing it's there. It's just like someone who has some substance use disorder. They're aware that exists, but we haven't gotten to acceptance yet, right? Yes. Acceptance, and that's recognizing how this pertains to me. It has nothing to do with whether I'm good enough or if I'm doing enough, but I'm accepting that this is tied to me or my child, because a lot of times we can accept things when it involves somebody else, right? Even our own kids, right? And we're all for, like, we could go toe to toe with anybody for our kids in general. This is what Black moms do, right? We may not have any information. We may not be informed. We may not have the awareness. We may not even be comfortable accepting, like, my child has this diagnosis or I'm dealing with this. But when it comes to the next step, which is advocacy, that's the third step. Look, we would walk a mile with everything with bare feet for our kids or our spouse, but we have to be willing to do the same for ourselves. Absolutely. And find time to do all of this stuff for family, for work. But when it comes to us, we don't. But once we realize, like we talked about on the airplane, self-care is not selfish. Like, we have to literally put our mask on to breathe, right? Yeah. So then we can reframe our perspective and start advocating for ourselves. And I'm going to give you a couple of points around that. Stop and breathe, right? We know that breathing resets our brain. Take 5 deep breaths. Do it with your child. Do it by yourself. Give yourself the space to just breathe. And, that's used in the military, it's used in yoga, it's used in therapy, it's used.
I use it in my classroom.
Yes, in all kinds of
this. Are you okay?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, all of what you're saying. I agree.
So we teach, like, my son and I wrote an interactive workbook called My Big Notebook for youth, right? And we teach them about this thing called square breathing, which is deep breathing, but in a square, right? And we teach the kids that, but moms need it too, right? We need to deep breathe. Here's another one. And I'm going to talk like I talk to my girlfriends. Okay, girl, you've been dealing with so much. Give yourself some grace. Where you are today, from where you were last year or 5 years ago, look at all you've endured and overcome or are in the process of overcoming. look at all you've held together. Honey, breathe and give yourself some grace. Okay? And I'm saying it, I'm telling you how I talk to my friends, and I tell myself this too. Say no.
Oh,
You can't
that's
say
my
yes to
favorite.
everything.
Oh, that's
You
my
cannot
favorite.
say yes to everything. You got to say no, because here's the thing. If we say yes to everything, we're going to be good at nothing. If we spread
Oh,
ourselves so thin that we can barely keep our eyes open at the end of the day, or we don't want to get up in the morning,
yeah,
we got to learn how to say no.
yeah.
Ask for help. We talked about that too. Ask for help. That could be therapy. That could be from a friend. That could be from, if you work at a company that has employee assistance, that could be through your EAP. It could be a number of things. And seek support. This may not be your day-to-day friends. We have to be open to learning. Like I said, so my son was my foster child, and I did adopt him. And so when the local Department of Social Services would not allow me to take this training for trauma, parenting a child that's experienced trauma, I went to another county, and they allowed me to do it. So we don't take the first no when it's about our kids, right?
Yeah.
I needed this to be informed as a mother. So
Right.
I'm going to push as much as I have to push, but I also have to do that about things for me, just for me as well. So
Absolutely.
those are some of the suggestions that I would give.
Those are outstanding. I hope the viewers are taking notes, have paper, pencil, or pen out, and writing down what I like to call these nuggets of wisdom. You're dropping gems. My students know I like to say things like that, especially on a Wednesday, Words of Wisdom Wednesday. So no matter what day, it's good to have wisdom which you are sharing, and I hope people are taking note of that, because that's excellent advice. Thank you so much. So for our next question, are there cultural or historical factors that contribute to the mental health disparities among Black mothers? And if so, how do you believe that we can address them?
So, I mean, I think the obvious answer is yes. I mean, this goes back to slavery days. You know, there was so much responsibility on Black moms. Not only were we caring for children, not necessarily our own children, or maybe our own children that we didn't desire to, you know, have sex with the master to have. We're taking care of master. We're taking care of the men to the extent we're allowed to. We're taking care of master's wife and children and whoever else. Like, again, strong Black woman, we had to become that. And then if you look at how the Black family was broken up through slavery and beyond, mass incarceration, all of these things, you know, so much has fallen on the shoulders of Black women. And while I am certainly a big believer in holding up our Black men, we need to ask for the same. We need to ask our Black men to support us and understand, you know, this strong Black woman syndrome, you know, which we've already discussed. It just is a setup for failure. Like, the real hero, in my opinion, is the one who waves the white flag, takes off that cape and asks for help. We just have to retire that cape. And I just think, again, I go back to awareness, acceptance, and advocacy. If you learn our history, I mean, I'm talking about real history. I'm not talking about what the whitewashed version of what some people learn in school. Even like we learn about, let me give you an example. There's an organization here in Charlotte, North Carolina called the Males Place. Two of my older boys joined the Males Place, and they went to Ghana. And they got to see the slave caverns. They got to see men and women adorned in gold. They got, like, we are of kings and queens.
Yes,
Do
we
you
are.
know, like, you understand, like, the pride that comes along with that? I told my boys, like, you've had an experience I haven't had. You know, I read about it. I see it. I'm going to get to Africa now. I am, but I love that for my kids. But we, like the 1619 Project, things like that, we need to learn, like, the real history and all the contributions we've made as women to this country, to the U.S. and abroad. I mean, we are so tightly aligned in many ways with the islands and African countries, so many of our challenges are the same or
Absolutely.
very similar, you know?
I
And
couldn't
so,
agree more. Absolutely.
so going through, an organization like this, being affiliated with it, listening and watching these sessions, it's all about knowledge. It's all about knowledge sharing and embracing each other and recognizing like we have to come together to really affect real change.
Absolutely. Like I said, I couldn't agree with you more. You were really sharing a lot for our viewers. And yes, those of us within the African diaspora really do need to come together and help one another, even though historically we have been, broken down, but we absolutely need to come together. We absolutely need to come together so that we can have care, self-care, care for each other. It cannot, as you've mentioned, be the continuation of the strong Black woman where we have to shoulder everything. That's not good for us, and really that's not really good for our men either. It may seem to be on the surface because
Yeah.
what's been done,
Right.
but really that unity that really breeds what we need, that love, that shared commitment to our community, right? So absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. You're making a lot of excellent points, so thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so our next question, I feel like these questions all like kind of make sense one after the next,
Yes.
based on the things that we're talking about. The support system you mentioned. So yeah, how can actually family, friends, communities support Black mothers in their mental health journey without the judgment or the stigma? So
Yeah.
how does that happen?
So I think there's really, I go back to my 3 tenets, but what I would say is ask that mom how she's doing and really actively listen.
Yes.
If you think something's going on, there's this thought like about suicide, for example. You mentioned suicide and you plant a seed. That's false, right? That is not true. If you mention suicide to someone who has suicide on their mind, it's not, or who doesn't, it's not going to encourage them to do it. If you see someone really struggling that you love, sit down with that person, and maybe that time it won't work, but keep trying in different ways to see like, how can I support you? What does that look like? And it's important, yes, to have that listening ear. We vent, and venting is fine, but we can't stay stuck there. We don't want to stay stuck there, right? You can do something like we talked about self-care, give mom a break for a couple of hours. How about, for me, for example, I have done this myself. I have said, look, I've been in therapy for years for many different reasons. I'll help you find a therapist and make an appointment. And if you want, I'll go with you, sit inside or outside. I've gone to a session, to an assessment with a mom who was concerned about what the results of an assessment would mean to her child and her family. But it actually meant more information to be able to make informed decisions, right? But she needed someone there to say, it's okay. This is going to be helpful, right? And so, we can talk to people for advice. Again, I'm a big fan of having a therapist. You might have a coach, which is not the same as a therapist. We know it could be a family friend, it could be a family member, but we also have to know that all advice is not good advice, right? Things like we just have to do our own due diligence. And some of us may not know what that looks like, but a lot of it is about, look, as moms, we have this power of discernment, right? We have this intuition. We know when something's not right with our babies, right? Into that inner child, and that may sound corny, but I'm a big believer in it. Like, what does my child need inside? Like, what did I need at age 10 or 11 that I didn't get? Right. And so what really brings me joy, learn about things like we talked about, coping strategies like deep breathing, learn how to put yourself first. But for other family members and friends, support that. Don't add to the load. Look at how you might be able to, it could be something very small.
Mm-hmm.
It could be something as small as literally, hey, can I take your kids to the movies?
Mm.
That might be one step. And then that person
Absolutely.
is like, oh, this person is really committed to supporting me in some way. It doesn't always have to be about money, right?
Right.
It could be,
Right.
I'll take the kids to the park, or, hey, I'm going to come over and help you clean up your house because I know you've been dealing with this crisis for
Right.
2 months, you know? I mean, I've had someone do that with me. Carla, let me just come over and clean up your kitchen. Not because
Mhm.
the kitchen is usually messy, because it's not, but
Right.
because
Right.
that was an indication that something was going on with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And your friends and family that are in tune with you will start recognizing those things, not like, oh, she's a troubled soul, but how can
Right.
I help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, these are excellent points. And, among the other things that I'm hearing from what you're saying really is coming alongside that Black
Yes,
mother.
absolutely.
Really, as you said, someone who is in tuned rather, coming alongside and seeing what support would be best to give that person an opportunity for care. So, as you said, whether it be the example of going to an appointment with someone who maybe doesn't feel comfortable or even making the appointment, to
Yes.
coming over and helping them do something that, like you said, maybe it's not that the person is messy or anything is wrong, but it's like allowing for that mother to just have a break, or taking the kids, just allowing for her to have a break, which we both mentioned. You said, and I agree that we don't want to do the strong Black woman thing. We want to be able to, like, have care for ourselves. So to be able to have someone come alongside and allow for us to have that care, because it's nice to say self-care, but if you don't have anyone to give you some time away from,
Mhm.
your children, that or child that love and you want to care for, but you do need breaks to care for yourself. And I think that coming alongside a mother is an excellent point.
Mhm.
So thank you
Yes,
for sharing that.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Uh, so, you had mentioned earlier about resources, and sometimes Black mothers don't really know that they
Mhm.
exist or things of that nature. So, what are some specific resources or organizations that focus on providing mental health support and resources tailored to Black mothers? And how can they be
Right. hmm So one of the things that I would say, of course, is this organization, right? We're bringing this to the forefront. We're normalizing the fact that as moms, we have to take care of our mental health, and it's all focused on, health and well-being of people of color, of Black people. As a part of this organization, I've gained a lot of insight, right? Watching replays of some of the videos have been really helpful. There are national, like in the United States, there are national organizations, there are local organizations. So doing some research, I'm a big fan of Google, but I also am a big fan of reading reviews. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll mention a couple. Here in the U.S., we have like Mental Health America. We that has things like self-assessments, where you can just do a self-assessment like, am I dealing with depression? Print out the results of that assessment and take it to your doctor, take it to your therapist. And so you're not self diagnosing. You're saying,
Mm-hmm.
this is something that could be, what's going on with me. I know
Right.
something's going on with me. I don't know what it is. I took this self assessment. Will you take a look at it?
Right.
The National Alliance on Mental Illness is another one.
Mm-hmm.
That has free classes across the U.S. And I mean, there are international organizations. Um, there's a Mental Health First Aid, which I think is awesome, and it's an
Mm-hmm.
international organization. And then there's also a program called QPR, Question, Persuade, and uh, Refer.
Mm-hmm.
Not the R, question, persuade, and refer. And this is typically free training that you can do, a lot of times online as well. Couple other things I wanted to mention. Some of these larger organizations may not, and some smaller too, may not have the cultural competence
Okay.
to support your needs.
Mm-hmm.
And just because it works for one person doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Right.
So I'll give you an example, and this isn't a huge thing, but I found a lot of support through Facebook groups. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
had to go through a process, right? And I still do. I'll see something new that comes up. I'm in a couple of Facebook groups for moms with children with special needs, and then there's moms with children, with Black children with special needs, particularly in the mental health arena, and then more specifically in the like PTSD, ADHD, those kinds of diagnoses in that realm. And the ones that were not relatable for me, all I had to do was say unjoin, and that's it. I'm also in a couple of groups for foster and adoptive parents. It's the same thing. I found one that's for Black adoptive parents, and it's males and females. And it's mainly the women who talk, I'll say that. But I've learned a lot of things, and I've been able to share some of the things I've learned as well. So it's like a whole online community, and online may not be the answer for everyone. I mean, and everyone doesn't have access online, but a lot of times, even on your phone or, go to the library, you can find local resources that can be helpful. A lot of, there are a lot of, and I'm just making sure, I'm just checking my notes. There are a lot of organizations out there that do have support for moms, prenatal, postnatal, right? There are sometimes within hospitals like specialized services, but we either don't know to ask for them, right? Or which we shouldn't have to, right? We should know that that's available. I mean, everybody knows that you can take a class to learn how to breastfeed, right? But what about these other classes that, can help us prepare mentally for what, we're about to deal with, And so what I would just say is, even in community, through doing things like that, someone will reach out to me. I'll reach out to someone else. I see a comment and maybe we'll have a quick discussion. I mean, I learned some things. My son is on an IEP, which is an individualized education program. It's a plan. And, I've had to really get up to speed on that over the last few years because it's become much more difficult the older he gets. And depending on the school administration, right? And this is something in the US, but I imagine there's something comparable, across the globe. And there was a steep learning curve. So I had to lean on people who were either experts or I took bits and pieces that would work for me. I found an advocate to support me. Some advocates are paid and some are for free. It depends on the organization. And so there is a lot out there. It's a matter of searching and not feeling defeated because the first try it didn't work out. Keep trying, because it's out there.
Look, I'm listening to you again, just to reiterate. I hope people have their pencil or pen and their papers, because you're just sharing a wealth of information. And I'm hearing really just a desire to learn how you can get the help, a Black mother. And so in that desire to learn, searching for that, be it through the internet or, conversations with people, and just trial and error, like you said, joining certain groups and knowing that if it doesn't work out, unjoin, that's fine. Right. So I love that. Absolutely. Yeah.
I know some moms who have dealt with death, right? And, many of us have, whether it's like a parent or a child. When we lost our mom, for example, my sister and me, we both dealt with her passing differently. And I still had to parent, I still had to do all these other things, right? So for her, I remember she joined an online group, but it was so depressing. It wasn't helping her with processing her feelings. It worked for many people. It didn't work for her. And so she looked at another path. For me, I have found a couple of different sources. And one of those things for me is learning everything I can. I have a book mentor, like a mentor who helps me with my books and just life in general, honestly. And he's a two-time Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, but he is the most down-to-earth person you've ever met. And he's like, come on, CC, let's get it. Let's go. Like, he's a man of action, right? And so I listen to him because I know his story. I know his story, and I know how he has helped other people. And so I listen to him, but I also take the nuggets that are going to work for me and my family. And so, you know, we talk about prayer with works. I'm a big believer in that. And I'm a big believer in seeking wise counsel. And that could look like many different things. You know?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm hearing customization, like we can seek out, you know, knowledge and wise counsel from a lot of spaces, but at the end of the day, we can take what works for us based on our unique circumstances in our life and our child or children. And so I'm hearing a lot of that, and that in of itself is wise, right?
Yes.
A lot of people may have a lot of opinions or a lot of advice and a lot of things, but at the end of the day, we each have to live our life for what's going to benefit us. So, so that's, yes, that's wise. People listen up.
And some of that is going to be trial and error. I mean, a lot of it will be, right? Some things will stick and some things will work and some things won't. And then particularly like as our children get older, right, the needs are different, right? You think I thought it would get easier as they got older, but now that my son has hit 13, I just retract all of that.
Ooh, the teenage life, that's another ball game. That I've taught middle school students for so long, that in high school students, that's a whole nother ball game. So I'm sending you lots of love and light.
Yes. So I met an author who does some, just by chance, like she was presenting at my company that I was working for at the time. And I just reached out to her on Instagram and she responded. And turns out she lives here in Charlotte. And so, you know, I bought her books. There are nuggets in there for me, you know, and it's not, this happens to be a white female, but some of the nuggets are relevant to my family and some of them may not be, or there's a twist to them, right? That I have to make, but I also have to have, like, I have faith in God. I also have to believe that I'm in the position I'm in for a reason and have some trust in myself, right? To take all of these nuggets and not by myself, right? Piece it together in a way that's going to work best for my family and specifically for me.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. People, you are really learning a lot today. I am learning a lot today, and I'm in a spirit of gratitude for all this knowledge and this wisdom. So, thank you so much. Okay, so the next question is, how can healthcare professionals, including obstetricians and pediatricians, better address the mental health needs of Black mothers during prenatal and postpartum care?
So my answer to this is real basic. I think first of all, I think healthcare professionals need to be educated on the mortality from Black births, right? Black children being born and the deaths of either the child or the mother or both. I don't think a lot of doctors are aware, or maybe it's a statistic over here, but it doesn't mean anything in the day-to-day to me. The other thing is that I believe that healthcare providers need to listen to their patients, listen to understand, not to respond. My example is Serena Williams. Everybody knows who that is, right? She told the doctors something is wrong. They're like, nope, it's stress, it's this, it's that. Something was wrong and she could have died, right? She could have lost her life. If Serena Williams, and I'm not saying it like I'm putting her on a pedestal, what I'm saying is she's got the best of the best care in theory, right? But clearly, whoever she was dealing with was not culturally aware or sensitive to the fact that mortality amongst Black women, mothers, and their children is so much higher statistically than other races, because that is the fact, right? So I think that that again, most of us are becoming more educated on postpartum depression. I think we also have, I mean, at the end of the day, there are hormones going through from the beginning to the end, right? There are things that happen to a mother when they are pregnant or when they lose a child, when birth to a child, after they give birth to a child, through this whole process. And I think we've learned a lot more about it. But I think that, I look at, if anybody watches, like Married to Medicine. I love Dr. Jackie on Married to Medicine because she sits down, she looks her patients in the eyes, she gives them wise counsel, right? But she also listens to what is going on with them and what they feel they need. And to me, that is worth its weight in gold. I mean, seriously. And I'm not saying everybody, because there's such a shortage of OBGYNs. I'm not saying everybody can get a Black OBGYN, but I think, as you are looking for that person, I don't care if you're on Medicaid, I don't care what your insurance is or if you have none, ask probing questions. Learn who you're dealing with. Look on psychologytoday.com if they're in the US and find out what the feedback is on that individual. Psychology Today, on the mental health side, there are medical boards and all kinds of things on the on what we're calling medical, right? OBGYNs. To say, like, what is the feedback from their patients? Look that person up. There are different websites that can tell you what is when a person has a good bedside manner and when they don't.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's actually one of the main things that I was thinking about as you were addressing this question is that bedside manner and absolutely as it relates to the mortality rates, among Black mothers and listening, right? And I completely understand the point that you were making as far as Serena Williams. It's like if that can happen to her, being someone of a sort of celebrity status, as it were, then any one of us could have not be listened to and possibly, suffer the effect of ourselves and or our child. So we absolutely want to, as you said, research and find out that someone who's going to have, care for us at such a vulnerable time as, having a child, we want to make sure that person is going to listen to us and help us and take what we're saying seriously, right? And not just pass off, from my understanding of sort of research and conversations that I've had with, friends that are kind of in this line of work as it relates to Black mothers, to actually get someone who's going to listen to you, because too often it's like, oh, that it's nothing, whatever we're saying, especially because the strong Black woman, right? So we're supposed to just deal with everything. We're supposed to just suck it up because we're strong. So there is that issue. So thank you for sharing that. So we need some healthcare professionals to make sure that they're really listening to us as Black mothers. So that is so. Thank you for that. So our next question: can you share personal stories or examples of Black mothers who have successfully navigated the challenges of motherhood while balancing work and life and everything under the sun? You kind of touched on your story, so if you want to use this time to share a little bit more of that, that would be even wonderful.
Yes. So I wanted to share some of my own experiences, and I would say I have unsuccessfully and successfully navigated these waters. And what I mean by that is this: I have definitely made pretty much every mistake in the book in terms of parenting, in terms of putting myself last, in terms of, just like your gas tank, you end up on E. I was beyond the red on E in certain parts of my motherhood journey. So, my story is that, I had several attempts at in vitro fertilization with my then husband, and we miscarried, or I miscarried. And that, that and other things led to our eventual divorce. And then I became a foster mom. And, I could check off all the boxes on what I was doing. What I didn't realize was the toll that it would take on me to be a foster mom. I lived with this baby. He was 10 days old and 2 months premature when he came into my life for 6 months, like a normal mother and son, except we had weekly visits with the birth parents. And the more I learned about the birth parents, the more I went from, honestly, I'm being honest here, being kind of judgmental about how did this woman have 11 children and get the other 10, all 10 of them taken from her, except for this one. And now I have him. I was judgmental, right? until I learned her story of intergenerational trauma and all these things. Like I learned it firsthand when he was given to the birth mother through the courts. And I said, you know what? I'm a rule follower, except when I know it's wrong. They let her have this child as if he had never been taken. So there was no support in place for her. There were no services in place for her, meaning, and so what that meant also was that she was left to her own circumstances, to parent. And she had already had such a traumatic childhood without support. She didn't end up having that one loving person or that teacher or whatever who helped her see beyond and to process her trauma and to give her, help her find an outlet for that. Right. So she still had all of this. I'm gonna call it like Erykah Badu bag lady. She had all these bags, right? And here I come, fresh faced, and doody-doo, thinking I can help just save this lady and therefore help her keep her son, right? But then it's like, hold on, who do I think I am? I can't save this woman. I'm not mentally capable. I'm not equipped. I'm not a professional. I can't do this. So I had all this worry about the safety of this little boy who I co-parented with the birth mom for 6 years, right? Until, I eventually got emergency custody of him. And in 2 years, I ended up adopting him. And then it's like, okay, all I ever wanted was for him to be safe and us to be together in a healthy way. I never wanted her to lose custody. I wanted things to get better. And so I put myself dead last. So by the time I got custody of him, to say I was on empty would be an understatement. Wow. But what I realized is if I don't get some help here, I'm going to fail him. I'm not going to be able to be a good mom to him because I'm worn out. Like I was over $100,000 in debt from this relationship. I was hurt in every way with good intentions, but I did a lot of this to myself. Like in hindsight is 2020, right? I don't regret anything, but I knew that I needed help on every aspect of the spectrum, like physically, mentally, emotionally, financially. I think I said spiritually already, but all these different lenses, I needed help. And so I had to go out and seek that help. And when I started doing that, and I got to a point where I started sharing our story. I did a TEDx talk. This is what worked for me, right? I wrote a book called Journey to the Sun. This was getting it out. Now, I will say that book is an adult-only book. It's the raw, uncut story, but I needed to get it out. Since then, I've learned how to share our story in a way that is helpful to others. It's not just me getting it, like vomiting it out, right?
Right.
This means to another mother who could be struggling with those 10 children. To say there is legitimate help out there for you, but what we've got to do is make sure you have some help and make sure you're taking care of yourself.
Absolutely.
And so, so I just think that, and I've interacted with so many mothers. There's a mom who has become like a sister to me from Trinidad and Tobago. We did a talk together called This Is My Brave out of Boston University. And we met through this whole process, and we came together in person to do these talks about, parenting a child with a mental health condition and the impact on us. And I look at she's a member now of Black Mental Health Matters. I brought her into the fold, but I look at all of the challenges she's faced. And her son was in the military, in Trinidad and Tobago, and, he came back different. And that's not uncommon, right? My son went through trauma and he was different through all of that trauma. Like he went from being a gentle, giant 5-year-old to someone who would appear to be a bully, but who was really afraid, who was really dealing with unresolved trauma and, still is. This is a one and done, like you go to therapy for 12 sessions and it's over. No, this is ongoing, but I am doing this for me too. I am going to therapy for me. This mom is helping others to help herself. This mother from Trinidad and Tobago that I mentioned, she still sees like so many challenges with her son, and she wants to help him, but in healthy ways, right? We don't want to enable our own kids, right? We don't want our kids to be so dependent on us unless they have to be. Like there are conditions where the child is just not going to be able to be out on their own, right? And even with that, we still need help, right? But we lead with our heart, but we also have to use our minds.
Absolutely. Oh my, I am in awe of you, and I just thank you for being so transparent and vulnerable and honest. You have, as you've described, gone through so much, and so that makes sense as to why you're able to really speak with this wisdom, this knowledge, and this counsel. And I love how you were honest, and throughout our conversation have said like you failed, you've been hurt, you've been sad, and out of all of that has really birthed this this ability for you to share in such a way to help yourself and your child and others. So there has been a purpose, albeit so much that you've had to go through. And but I'm grateful to be one of the individuals that gets a chance to hear your story, learn from you, be in awe of you. And so, yeah, I'm just in a spirit of gratitude to be able to have this conversation and listen and learn. So
and I appreciate the opportunity to share. I'll tell you, this was not on my radar, at all. Like mental health was not on my radar until it was.
Right.
Once I saw that and experienced trauma up close and personal, and then secondhand trauma and all these different things, like you can't unexperience that. You can't unsee it. You can't, close the box. Now it's been open. And so for me, I had to find healthier ways to help people, right? And now my test is a testimony, right?
Exactly. Well said.
My calling, that's what it is. And that's why I speak with such passion, because I know there are a lot of moms out there struggling. Like I'm going through this on my own, all by myself. Nobody else is dealing with this. Not. You know what I'm saying? You're not. Everybody's story is going to be a little unique. Everybody's story is going to be a little different, but there are some foundational things that will be similar, like the lack of self-care, like the desire to be a strong Black woman, like needing to retire, that phrase.
Right.
That.
Exactly.
Everybody's story is gonna take different twists and turns, but we're in this together, and that's real.
That is so real. I don't have anything to add to that. Well said. I'm just, I have nothing else. So our next questions, let's see, because we have a little bit more time and the people would want to know.
Okay.
All right. Let me, if I can find it. All right. Let's see. Okay. So what policy changes or initiatives are needed to improve mental health support and access to the care for Black mothers, particularly those from marginalized communities? So, what are your thoughts on that?
So I think that, initiatives that support the Black community should always include a mental health component for families, including like preventive measures that address concerns before they become major hurdles, right? We wait until we're on empty, until we literally can't function. We might be balled up in the closet somewhere because we cannot do anything else. We don't want to get to the point of crisis, right? We want to take some proactive steps to be able to do that. And for that to happen, there have to be resources out there for us. I even think, this is my opinion, community programs that provide things like milk, diapers, food stamps should also include mental health services for mom and education. I think that's really important. I think having culturally competent medical professionals who actually care about their patients and ask probing questions, that matters. I also see how insurance companies influence and pharmaceutical companies influence doctors, like prescribe this pill. That's only, a pill could be a part of the solution, but it's not the only part, right? Instead, we need to go deeper, let that doctor make a referral. Let this community organization say, hey, I have some resources that could help you. Here's an example, because my son was adopted, and we've gone, well, it's not just because he was adopted. We went through this program called intensive in-home therapy. We also went through family-centered therapy, which didn't necessarily work for my family, but could work for the next family, right? But one of the great things that came out of that is that we now qualify for what's called respite. Respite is when, mom gets to take a break. So it takes a long time to find the right person or people for respite, but I can get, coming up very soon in the coming months, I'll get a weekend to myself. With someone who was vetted, who went through background investigations, who has experience in this space. I was even able to get like a teacher who taught him during the pandemic to go through the process to become respite for him, because he's taken a trip with her to go visit her family in Florida. Who better than to be one of the people who provide him with respite, right? And so that's something a lot of people don't even know exists. And it doesn't mean it's available to everyone, but certainly, like in his case, because of his mental health challenges and because of my own, because we needed some additional support in the home, and probably still do as things change, as these hormones keep changing, I will raise my hand in a heartbeat and say, come again.
Both your hands and both your feet.
Yes.
Is what I like to say. We need help. Absolutely. Yes.
I also believe Medicare reform and Medicaid reform in the United States is very important. I think that in addition to that, I don't care if you have private insurance, public insurance, if you have Medicaid, Medicare, whatever it is you have, I think you should be able to understand it. And so I think we need to get out of these big, long manuals and get some common sense. Here's an example. I had to go through a private adoption to adopt my son because he was no longer in the foster care system, right? But he had been in my home for on and off for 6 years, right? So one of the things that I found out through the adoption agency, just in a casual conversation, was that I can get adoption assistance for him because he used to be in the system. And not only do I get a monthly stipend to support him, I also get and this is through North Carolina. I don't know how it is in every other state or country, but different places have different benefits that you don't even know about, don't even know to ask about them, right? I keep pushing for information. Like, I know I need help. I don't know what this looks like, but what I was able to do is get him into music therapy. Medicaid for it. Right?
Yeah.
I was able to do a number of different things for him that will help him grow and expand his social skills, right? Because that's one of the potential impacts of a person with trauma, right? Their social skills, because of developmental delays, may not be up alongside with their peers. And that's not a negative thing, but it's something where we need some additional support, right?
Right.
A lot of the conversations that I've had, just random conversations, that's how I've learned about things. And that's not how it should go. I don't think we should happen upon resources or support. I think for any of these initiatives, there has to be communication, marketing, outreach, especially in our impoverished communities, in our communities that are underserved, in families that have a distrust for government. From personal experience, I think that there are different ways to reach these families. And I think one of them is just speaking to it like, I'm sitting at a desk and all this, but trust and believe I'll be on the floor with my kid having a heart-to-heart conversation like the next mom,
Right.
I'll be going to bed with, trying to get 8 hours of sleep, knowing I'm not going to get it. We all have some things in common. And so one of the things I think is so important is to keep your eyes open and look out. Like I said, a support group here might not be for you. The next one may be. Could be online, could be in person. It's hard to say. I'm going to find something that's relatable. And if I don't find it, I may even try to create it myself.
You know what? We're going to end it on that lovely nugget right there, is that sometimes we might just have to create it for ourselves, but because we want to make sure that, we are finding ways to care for ourselves.
Yes.
And so I'm just so grateful again. Thank you so much for being here on the show, for sharing so much, for being honest and vulnerable, and dropping gems, and just sharing all this wise counsel and wisdom with our viewers. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you for being here. Any final words that you'd like to say to our viewers?
Sure. I would love to actually hear from any of our viewers, either through, the post, through this broadcast, or they can even visit my website, which is mybignotebook.com, and learn a little bit about our big notebook that has helped a lot of kids in the United States and abroad, in Liberia and some other countries too. We really want to help other people, and everything we've seen so far from the kids that have gone through the workbook, their parents and caregivers have learned a lot too. And so that's what we want to do. It's not just about selling a book. It's about planting seeds within our parents, our moms, and our children, so we can all grow together.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in and for joining us for this episode. So with that being said, wishing us all wellness, be well, and have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.